Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome so much to come and visit with us and learn more about our COVID vaccination Dishonorable Discharge Prevention Act that we'll be offering as an amendment to the NDAA when and if we ever get to vote on that. You know, next Thursday, November the 11th, is Veterans Day, a day that we stop, that this nation pauses to honor our veterans. Our president instead is choosing to dishonor our military active duty officers by forcing them to be separated from the military and then pushing upon them a dishonorable discharge. My colleagues here joining me will offer some more statements about it, but first I want to introduce Mike Berry. Mike Berry is the General Counsel for the First Liberty Institute. He joined First Liberty in 2013 after serving 7 years as an active duty Marine. He deployed to Afghanistan in 2008, and from 2009 to 2012, he served as an adjunct professor of law at the Naval Academy. He continues to proudly serve our nation as a member of the Marine Corps Reserve and is now a lieutenant colonel. And today he's working feverishly to defend dozens, actually 40, active duty SEALs and reservists seeking a religious exemption to the COVID vaccine. Mike, let me turn it over to you and tell a little bit about your story and the folks that you represent.
Thank you, Senator. As a veteran, I can say that when you raise your right hand and you swear the oath to support and defend the Constitution and you join the United States military, you certainly give up some of your freedoms, and we all recognize that, but you do not give up your religious freedom when you serve this country. And yet that is exactly what First Liberty Institute's clients are facing today, is the loss of their religious freedom, being forced to choose between their faith and serving this country. And our clients, these 40 U.S. Navy SEALs, collectively have more than 350 years of military service, more than 100 combat deployments. That's the type of experience and leadership and combat experience that's irreplaceable and incalculable. And yet they face the loss of their careers, they face being involuntarily separated, their families have been punished by being told that they're not allowed to travel. Even spouses and children are not allowed to travel simply because they have a sincere religious objection to the vaccine. They face the loss of special pay due to their special operations status. And the Navy has now threatened these SEALs with recoupment of the training money spent training them to become Navy SEALs and giving them the specialized training that they have to do what they do. And speaking of doing what Navy SEALs do, this is a time in our nation's history when we face very real threats. Threats from China and North Korea, Iran, Russia. And we should expect that every one of our able-bodied Navy SEALs and other service members, we want them defending this nation, fighting for our freedom. And instead, they're fighting for their livelihoods and their careers. That's un-American and that's wrong. So First Liberty Institute, it really is one of our greatest honors to represent these warriors, these Navy SEALs. And all we're asking is that the Department of Defense honor the Constitution and the rule of law, honor its own regulations, and allow these Navy SEALs to continue to serve with a religious accommodation to avoid having to take this vaccine that violates their conscience and their sincerely held religious beliefs. Again, I'm proud to represent them. I'm proud to be a part of First Liberty, and I thank the gentlemen, the senators behind me, who are also standing up for religious freedom in our military. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good job. Thank you. Rick Scott.
First, I want to thank Senator Marshall for putting this together. My father served in the Second World War. He did all the combat jumps as a member of the 82nd Airborne. I'm very proud of what he did. I've got a picture of him in my office along with a rifle from his company. He never thought he'd come back alive. Very few of his friends came back alive. I had the opportunity to join the Navy. My father told me how great the food was in the Army, so I decided to join the Navy. And I knew there wouldn't be any foxholes, so I joined the Navy at 18 years old. I served as a radarman. I never imagined that our federal government, that I took the oath to defend the freedoms of this country, would come back and say, if you don't put something in your body that you don't feel comfortable with, right or wrong. And I took the vaccine. I've had COVID. But if you don't do this, then we're going to one, kick you out of the military, something that, so many of my friends served and my family members served for decades, and we're going to give you a dishonorable discharge. I mean, and which is going to have first, it's going to impact your livelihood. Second, it's going to impact your future. You can't imagine this, but Joe Biden is telling you exactly what he thinks of our military, whether it's the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, whether it's the not wanting to fund our military, and now this. He doesn't respect the sacrifices our men and women in the service are taking every day. You look at people that put themselves in harm's way. They've come back home now, and they said, "We're going to kick you out, and we're going to give you a dishonorable discharge, even though you went over and defended the freedom of this country and put your life at risk." This is disgusting. It's wrong. It needs to stop. Joe Biden needs to start standing up for the men and women of our military instead of trashing them and tell them he's going to ruin their lives. That's exactly what his goal is. He is going to ruin their lives by kicking them out of the military and giving them a dishonorable discharge. This needs to change.
Speaking of the Navy, another Navy person here, Roger Wicker.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Air Force, but I do love.
You've got all the Navy stuff in your office.
I do, yeah, right. Well, we're all in it together, and we need all the help we can get. We certainly don't need to be losing our best and our brightest and our bravest from the force at a time like this. I am Lieutenant Colonel Roger Wicker, U.S. Air Force, retired, and my father was also in World War II. By the way, he's 97 years old, living in Pontotoc, Mississippi, and doing very well. Thank you, living in his own home. But he served proudly in the European theater, 4 battle stars. My son McDaniel, Air Force, just like his dad, and served in Afghanistan. They both served in much more dangerous situations than I ever did, but I'm proud that we're 3 generations of military members. And Mike, yes, thank you for your organization and for what they're doing for liberty. And Mike is correct. When I took the oath, and when my dad took the oath, and my son, we did give up certain amounts of our freedom. But I will tell you this. Our commander-in-chief is grossly miscalculating the will of the American people. And not only is he going to create a crisis in the United States military, but writ larger, these mandates across our economy, mandates to small businesses, mandates to businesses that would contract with the federal government, they are not going to be well received. And the free American citizens that I know and that I talk to when I go back home are not going to stand for this. He's going to create a shortage in the military. He's going to create morale problems. And in the economy as a whole, this is going to be a Biden recession. So thank you, Senator Marshall, for crafting a very thoughtful approach to this issue. And let me once again call on Leader Schumer, bring the NDAA to the floor of the Senate as it has been done for 60 straight years. Let's allow this amendment, and let's allow the American people to see where their elected senators stand on this issue.
Thank you to my colleagues, especially Senator Marshall, for bringing this thoughtful solution. Mike, thank you for being here, for your incredible work advocating for the religious freedom of the people who are, where we're advocating for the religious freedom, they're actually willing to die for ours. It's quite a remarkable thing when you think about it. You know, sometimes I in this job, I find we're pretty good at complicating simple things. Occasionally, we oversimplify complicated things. And I try hard not to do either. But the elegant solution that Roger has drafted in this bill, I think, strikes the perfect balance. It simply states that there should be nothing less than an honorable discharge for somebody who has taken the oath, stood in the gap, and makes a decision, a religious decision, or for any other reason, to not get the COVID-19 vaccine. What's different about COVID-19 vaccine versus the other vaccines that you agreed to take when you took the oath is that this one came after you took the oath. It's not an unreasonable request. Now, why does it matter so much to me, in addition to serving with Roger and on the Armed Services Committee? And Roger, thank you. Yes, Senator Schumer, let's bring the NDAA to the floor. It's time. It's long past time. It's because I've been hearing from my constituents that serve. I've been hearing from the moms of some of my young constituents who serve. They're very concerned about this. It's not a trifling matter to them. This is not just sort of a macho standoff. This is heartfelt, conscientious, liberty issue. I mean, this is a big deal to them. But so is serving. And so there's a lot, there's always a lot of area between the front end and the back end of things, but this one's really simple, and I think it strikes the right balance. Thank you.
Right. Kevin, thank you. Let me just give you a few closing remarks. We'll open up for questions. President Biden wants to turn heroes into felons. That's what his policy is doing. He wants to turn heroes into felons. Think about the consequences of a dishonorable discharge. My dad started off his military career as a military policeman. He then became a police officer in my hometown, rose through the ranks, became chief of police for 25 years. My dad told me as a young lad he would never hire a person with a dishonorable discharge from the military. And so many of those military folks follow the same career path that my father did. The people that serve in the military make great police officers. But there's also some other issues, what a dishonorable discharge would mean as well. You would lose your access to GI Bill for more education. You would lose access to VA home loans, your VA medical benefits, military funeral honors. I just can't tell you, every week, every month, we get requests to make sure that someone gets proper military funeral honors, how important that is to Americans. They cannot re-enlist in another branch. They will lose ownership of firearms or ammunitions. And in some states, they can lose their voting rights. This is a big issue. It is a big deal. It's going to make our nation less secure. Probably over 50% of our enlisted soldiers in the National Guard, the Army Reserve, have not had the vaccine yet. So many, probably another, thousands of other people that are active duty have not had the vaccine yet. And these are based upon religious convictions. Yesterday, I sat down with an active duty Navy SEAL officer and said, tell me why you don't want the vaccination. And he went through a very deep spiritual context of his faith-based decision, prayer and thought. And that was his conclusion. And I'm not saying that I would follow his logic perfectly, but I respect his faith and his ability to make that decision. And just like one size doesn't fit all, when a doctor sees a patient or treating a patient, I think the same applies to your religious freedoms as well. We should respect their religious freedoms. You don't give that up when you go in the military. And let me just join my colleagues here on asking Senator Schumer to bring the NDA to the floor with this amendment so our soldiers who are separated because of the vaccine mandate issue are not given a dishonorable discharge. So thanks. I'll open it up for questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Kelly with Fox News. I have a question. The OSHA rule that was released this morning just a few minutes ago. I want to get your initial reaction on that. There's a penalty of $14,000 in some cases that may be enforced against small businesses who are out of compliance with getting all of their employees vaccinated. Wanted to get your initial reactions on that, and if it will, exacerbate the labor shortage that our country is facing.
I'm happy to. As you know, a lot of businesses have been preparing for this rule. since the President was pretty clear about it in his previous statements, his press statements. And the worst part about it is that every employer has to prepare for the worst case scenario just in case this day happened, and it did. As you know, we're preparing a Congressional Review Act. Republicans are, and going to be offering that. That will allow us, upon the completion of the rule, to immediately bring a privileged motion to the floor and object to it. I don't know how many Democrats will join us, but any Democrat that has paid even a little bit of attention to what's gone on the last couple of days in this country, particularly in Virginia and New Jersey, ought to be getting the picture. If inflation wasn't clear enough, if a workforce shortage wasn't obvious enough, then at the very least, the election results should have been obvious enough for them to backtrack. Clearly, they haven't. So we're going to do what we can to stop it. I've heard from lots of employers and, frankly, a lot of employees. I was just down at the border. I was down in McAllen at the Rio Grande Valley border last week. The sector chief there told me, and of course these are federal employees, he's going to lose 20% of the Border Patrol agents at a time when we have a surge of illegal immigration. There are real consequences to this stuff, and it is beyond me that there's not somebody with a little bit of economic competence in this administration that understands that, if not just common decency.
Kelly, and I'll just follow up and say one word: inflation. Can you spell inflation? Inflation and this vaccine mandate are the number 1 and 2 problem I'm hearing back home about. This rule from the President is going to exacerbate an already horrible labor shortage problem. It's going to create more supply chain blocks, and that's going to lead to inflation as well. This vaccine mandate, federal vaccine mandate, is unconstitutional, and from a practical standpoint, I just couldn't think of another worse decision for this President to make right now. Yes, sir.
Eric Gonzalez with EWTN News Nightly. Thank you so much, Senators, for holding this. First question I just have is, with the Air Force in particular, they've received 5,000 religious exemptions, and so far they have granted 0. Your reaction to that?
Yeah. Mike, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, the Air Force has granted 0. The Department of the Navy has said that it has not granted a single religious accommodation for a vaccine since 2015. They seem to be proud of that statistic, which surprises me and disappoints me. I think what it shows is that there is no intent to grant any religious accommodations to these vaccines, and yet that's exactly what the law provides for, right? You have federal law, Department of Defense regulations that all, for years, have allowed service members to seek religious accommodations, and not even just in the vaccine context. Let's just look at history. During World War II, there was a conscientious objector who sought a religious accommodation. He wanted to continue to serve his nation, but he did not want to carry a weapon in combat because of his religious beliefs. He was court-martialed for that because he refused to carry a weapon. And then the Army came to its senses and thought, you know what, we need every able-bodied person into this fight that we can get. And they said, we're going to allow him to serve as a medic so that he doesn't have to carry a weapon. That soldier, his name is Desmond Doss, he went on to receive the Medal of Honor for saving 70 lives during World War II. There are 70 sons whose mothers are grateful that the Army granted that religious accommodation. And I dare say that there would be thousands more today if, again, the Department of Defense would come to its senses and grant these religious accommodations.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I would take a shot at that as well, Eric, because your question gets to the heart of the matter. And I mean, I think it's pretty clear the Department of Defense has no intention of issuing any exemptions for religious purposes. I mean, I think they've basically stated that, and that's what the main reason we're here. But I want to just think for a minute. What kind of a person is willing to stand in the gap for their friends? Scripture tells us, right? There's no greater love as a man than this, that he'd lay down his life for a friend. That's a pretty strong religious statement. These are the kind of people who make these decisions to sign up, to serve. They have a servant's heart. And then to disrespect that servant's heart with this kind of a rule just violates all kinds of common sense and ethics and great traditions of our great country. And so we're at a bit of at an inflection point, to say the least. This is one issue that I think is the inflection point of the governing philosophy of this country. But what Roger has done with this bill, this is why I call it elegant, because so we have some pretty hard feelings about some people in the DOD and the chain of command. But what this does is it doesn't necessarily criticize the chain of command. It takes this burden from them. There are times when we need to give our commanders flexibility, and then there are times when we need to prescribe. One of the great things about the exceptionalism of America is that our military is led by civilians. And people that elect those civilians are the people we respond to. We have different jobs. Whether you carry a weapon, fly a jet, sail, whether you have stripes or stars or eagles, their job's different than our job. And our job is to set policy, and occasionally that policy needs to be very prescriptive. This bill is very prescriptive, and I would think every commander, because remember, at the end of the day, there's only one commander, and that's the commander-in-chief. So everybody else is carrying out his orders. And so the Congress of the United States has this opportunity in the National Defense Authorization Act that needs to come to the floor. We're already dangerously late. No other country is waiting on us, certainly not our adversaries. And this is just one more thing that's one more reason why we need to pass the NDAA, so that we have a ready, deployable, committed military that's adequately paid, compensated, and knows that we have their backs. Yes.
Just a quick follow-up question,
Sure.
if I can.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about how this is going to have a direct effect on the number of people who want to even serve, who are in the military right now, who want to continue to serve. But do you think that is the ultimate goal when you're looking at the bigger picture of the Democratic Party, when you look at the spending for defense?
Yeah. So I have a hard, I try to avoid getting in the heads of other people or impugning their motives. I don't know what motivates them. But it's hard not to be a little bit cynical when you consider the threats in our world. You guys, in case we hadn't noticed, China successfully tested a hypersonic missile recently that orbited the entire Earth, a missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead and capable of avoiding our detection. They're not screwing around. And by the way, they don't care about their men and women that wear the uniform. They just order them to do it. And so you do sort of wonder, what is your goal in all of this? I want every mom and dad in America who has children to be proud if their child should make a decision to join the military. What I don't want is every mom and dad in America advising their children, whatever you do, don't join that outfit, because they're going to strip you of more liberties than you're willing to defend. I think it has a real readiness component to it, and whether or not that's the goal, it certainly is what's being accomplished if we're not careful. Yeah.
Let's all righty. I got to get, wait just a second, I got to get to a committee here, and I'm still good. Go ahead.
We're run by our schedulers.
Yes.
Hi, Christina Wong from Breitbart News. Thanks so much for doing this.
Of course.
There's been some support on the House side for this type of proposal. Do you expect any Democratic support for your proposal in the Senate?
I do think there's a great possibility of that, and this has been included in the on the House side already. So I think that's a great first step. There is a path to victory. I would sure like to think that there would be as well. Yes, sir.
What I understand, you can only be dishonorably discharged if you're court-martialed. Are you suggesting that people who are refusing the vaccine are being court-martialed?
I think that every branch of the military is going to be handling this differently, and certainly they're being threatened with court-martialed. And Mike, I think this is your expertise. Do you think that anyone might be court-martialed through this?
It's definitely a fact that commanders have been using the threat of court-martial, whether that is a hollow threat or it's being used to pressure or coerce service members to get the vaccine remains to be seen. I do think that it's an interesting fact that the DoD has now admitted that it has been granting, although relatively few, it has been granting some medical exemptions, but that thus far it has not granted any religious exemptions. So we are now at a point where religion is being treated on a far less favorable status than other types of issues such as medical waivers, et cetera. And once again, that violates federal law. That violates the DoD's own regulations. So I also think that the Department of Defense knows that the vast majority of people who have not yet received the vaccine, that they haven't received it because they have a sincerely held religious objection. And I don't think that that's lost on the Department of Defense. And so, I'll let other people speculate and connect the dots as to why the Department of Defense might be digging in its heels and saying, well, we're not going to grant any of these religious exemptions, when that continues to be the vast majority of those who have yet to be vaccinated.
Daniel, this is why the prescription's so important. Sure, you carry out the worst case scenario, and we're just taking that worst case scenario off the table. That relieves the commanders, it relieves the Department of Defense, it relieves even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from making a different decision. And they should be relieved with that relief.
And a quick follow-up as well. Remember what the first comments from the White House were on this issue, is that the president wanted the dishonorable discharge to be given to these people. Was it Jen Psaki or the president's words out of their mouth?
I don't know.
Okay, so that was the first response from the Commander-in-Chief's office as well. Probably got time for one more. Go ahead, John.
Dr. Marshall, the NIH put out some information saying they had a study. The NIH put out some information saying they had a study that proved that vaccines are more effective than natural immunity. If you're a doctor, I was wondering if you've seen this study, if you're familiar with it, if you could opine on whether or not vaccines are more effective than natural immunity, how that works. Your thoughts are.
I appreciate the question. I think that the wealth of evidence, the wealth of studies would suggest that natural immunity is better than vaccination immunity. And what the NIH and the CDC does is they conflate an issue. They want to talk about having had the virus plus the vaccine as opposed to immunity from natural immunity as opposed to the vaccine. They constantly conflate the issue. The latest study that they put out, will be in a hearing here in a few minutes, submitting articles that dispute and just really tear down that study. It was one of the worst quality of studies I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe that they printed it. And have lots of quotes from doctors just dispelling what a horrible representation that was as far as a study. I'm begging the CDC to acknowledge natural immunity.
We have time for 2 more questions. We'll take it from the Zoom. Leo Shane with Military Times. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity here. Just have a question about what this covers. Is this just for the COVID vaccine, or would this apply to other vaccine refusals as well?
Yeah. This is specifically for the COVID vaccine.
Go ahead, Leo.
And is there any discussion about expanding that for religious exemptions for other vaccine folks who are saying they have an objection to the anthrax vaccine or any of the other vaccines that are forced to do?
We've not had that discussion.
Okay, and then final question from Corey Dickstein with Stars and Stripes. Go ahead, Corey.
Yes, thank you guys. Just kind of following up, I guess, a little bit on Leo's. I wonder, for Mr. Berry, for your clients, what makes this vaccine different than the 17 others required by DoD, and can you kind of characterize what it is religiously that makes them object to the vaccine? Thank you.
Well, we represent 40 different Navy SEALs, so 40 different individual people with their own individual consciences and faith. So it would be impossible for me to characterize in one phrase, all of their religious beliefs into one bucket. So I can say with 40 different individuals, you've got 40 different beliefs, and that's reality, right? That's human nature. But I will say that I've spoken to each of them, and I've asked them about their sincerely held religious beliefs, about their objection to the vaccine. And the good news is that for American citizens and for service members, really the only burden they carry is to establish that they have a sincerely held religious belief that the government is substantially burdening. And that's exactly what is happening here. is that the government is forcing them to choose between their faith and their service. And once that happens, the burden now rests on the government, on the Department of Defense, to show why it should be able to do that. What is its compelling interest, and how is that compelling interest furthered by the least restrictive means? And thus far, nobody in the Department of Defense has been able to do that. In fact, of the hundreds, possibly thousands of religious accommodation denials that we've seen, every single one of them is identical. And by literally the only thing that's different is the name of the recipient of the denial. Everything else is the proverbial rubber stamp, carbon copy of one another, which again suggests that the Department of Defense is not taking its role seriously. It's not taking religious liberty seriously. But I can tell you that these Navy SEALs each take their faith very, very seriously, and they don't want to be kicked out of the military. Everybody that I've talked to, they do not want to be separated involuntarily. They want to continue to serve. Right? There's a famous saying that the American soldier doesn't fight because he hates the enemy that lies in front of him. He fights because he loves the country that lies behind him. And I'm asking the Department of Defense, please don't cause these brave warriors to begin to lose trust and confidence in the country that lies behind them that they love so much. Thank you.
Those comments, Kevin?
I think that
Okay. I want to wrap it up with just one more thought. I want to put names and faces on this story. I mentioned yesterday that I sat down with a Navy SEAL and listened to his story. And just how one size doesn't fit all. There's no way the CDC can have a policy to take care of every situation like this, and nor can the DOD. As an Army doctor once upon a time myself, this is how I would view one of Mike's clients coming in, a Navy SEAL who's 19 years of age, young and healthy. I would talk to him one-on-one about the vaccine and the potential benefits and the risk. That Navy SEAL officer I'm talking about has a 50 out of a million chance of getting heart inflammation, a swollen heart from this vaccine. That's going to put him out of action for 6 months. That same otherwise healthy Navy SEAL, maybe 5 out of a million chance of getting hospitalized, probably even less than that, as good a shape as they're in. So I'm the Army doctor, and I'm trying to keep my platoon ready to go, ready for action. Which is worse? Which is better? And that's why you can't apply one size fits all to everything. On the other hand, if there was a 55-year-old person in the military with type 2 diabetes, I would be begging him to get the vaccination and the booster. I support the vaccine. I don't support mandates. I don't support one size fits all. And then I want to take it to the religious freedom side of this. Again, like Mike said, you listen to 40 Navy SEALs, why they want a religious exemption. Everyone is different. I think our chaplains do an amazing job in the military. Why aren't they involved in this process of listening to this soldier's story and saying, I get it. You have a deep-seated faith here. You've made a decision based upon prayer. You've visited with your pastor, your family. All these people, I think that God speaks through the friends and my God usually talks to me through my wife very often. So I think that there is an element of individuality here, what this nation has always stood to fight for. And just close once again, Senator Schumer, please bring the NDA to the floor so we can vote on this amendment and make sure that our soldiers don't get a dishonorable discharge. Thank you so much.